How are you all? You good? Good. Okay. My title. So who's standing in your way? It might be a bit of a trick question. Okay. So, as human beings, we have an internal and an external aspect to ourselves. What would our internal aspect be, if I could ask everyone? Feel free to answer. Mind, yeah. Mind. And so, in turn, what would our external aspect be? Everyone has one, otherwise you wouldn't be able to exist. Body. Okay, so everyone has a mind and a body. Okay. So we have these two dual aspects within ourselves. So we have our mind and our body. So our mind is inside us. We can't necessarily perceive it. We have a brain. Of course, we know that because people have been dissected, and we know that within us we have a brain, and it has cognitive abilities. We have electric pulses that control us. But physically, our mind, how we think, you can't really quantify. I mean, scientists know that certain things are happening in the brain at certain times because of electrical stimuli, but our mind is very much our own thing, and it's very internal, very personal. And our body is external, it's for everyone to see, so everyone can see who we are. We dress ourselves, to look a certain way, to give a certain appearance. So, out of the mind and the body, which one's in control most of the time? Well, I would hope is in control most of the time for everyone here. The mind. So, when we're going about our daily lives, our mind's in control. So we're thinking about things, we're thinking about what we're doing, we're thinking about what's going to happen next, we're thinking about, I have my studies, what should I be memorizing, what should I be learning, what should I be thinking about, what am I having for dinner, so on and so forth. Our mind's generally in control of us. But does that mean our body's less valuable in that sense, if our mind's in control? Generally, no, because actually, in order to have our mind, we also have to have our body. So they're both equally valuable, except our mind is actually in a more subjective position because it's what we use to reason, it's what we use to control ourselves. But in order to do that, we also have to have a body, we have to be able to survive. So, we have to be able to carry out our daily functions. So breathing, eating, sleeping, all these, necessary kind of aspects of our daily lives as human beings, as entities that basically exist physically. Okay, so the mind is more important. So as we grow up, we nurture our mind and our body. So the body naturally grows up because as we physically age, we grow up and we get bigger. And also mentally, we also grow up, and as we understand and learn how the world exists, then we also expand our horizons, and also we actually expand our understanding of the world. So, it's this process as we grow up of expanding ourselves and also maturing. So we mature our mind and our body. So in order to become a more mature person or a grown-up person, we have to mature these things. So they both kind of happen naturally. But also, in addition to having those things happen naturally when we mature, there's also this nurture and nature aspect. So naturally we grow up, but also we can also nurture ourselves. I'm sure that as we grow up, we all want to become the best, kind of person that we can be. We also want to kind of find out, who am I really? What kinds of things do I find interesting? So, we study sciences, we study humanities, we find out, who we are and, how to develop ourselves. But at the same time, we reach points where we're questioned, and also we have to we reach obstacles basically. And oftentimes it can be quite difficult. In today's society, we have things like Facebook, mobile phones, games, all kinds of distractions. And it's quite difficult necessarily to find a focus. I know definitely while I was studying, there was a lot of times where I should be focusing on one thing, but you end up procrastinating, you end up deviating, and you end up being distracted by all kinds of societal things or influences, and sometimes that can get in the way of what we want to do. So in this case, my kind of physical, more bodily desires were getting in the way of what I was kind of wanting to do. So I should have been studying most of the time. Didn't necessarily happen that way. I did fulfill my responsibilities. I did end up studying, but actually it took a lot of determination, a lot of focus in order to do so. And it can be quite difficult to actually get your mind to be in control of you all the time. So a lot of the times we might have goals. We start the new year, we have goals, we set ourselves goals for the year. Of those New Year resolutions, how many of those goals do we actually fulfill? Some people might fulfill all of them, in which case they would have very good discipline, and that's a very good aspect to have. But in a lot of cases, people don't necessarily always fulfill those goals. And then you ask yourself, why can't I fulfill those goals? Am I letting other things get in the way of what I want to achieve, essentially, which is being the best person, maybe achieving a goal, if you want to get a degree, or if you want to become a really good cyclist, or the best runner, etc., etc. And so in a lot of cases, you allow other things to distract you. I mean, a very general case would be if you really enjoy eating food and you shouldn't overeat, but then you end up doing it anyway. I know people like eating ice cream or crisps and things like that, and then you end up getting into this cycle where you just keep on doing those things, and then you actually lose the control that you should have. So as we mentioned before, the mind should generally be in control of the body. But actually when we nurture these other kinds of desires and these other aspects of ourselves, we actually lose that control. And so by doing that, you're not necessarily in control, you're not necessarily doing the things that you should be doing and fulfilling your responsibilities. And so that can be quite difficult at times. I'm sure everyone's gone through those kind of aspects and those phases. We allow the body to have its desires, and so we don't necessarily do what we're supposed to do, so we don't fulfill our responsibilities. So that can be difficult. Moving on. Okay. So how do we allow our mind to actually, keep control? So how do we nurture this aspect of ourselves to actually have dominion over our body? Does anyone have any ideas?
We do small steps. So start with doing something easy, so you can accomplish something, so you get a sense of satisfaction from having some level of control, and then you can have greater and greater levels of control.
It's quite a good answer. I generally agree with that. As human beings, I think we could generally agree that we're trying to attain happiness or some joy in our lives. And so when we do things that are negative or don't necessarily correspond with what we want to achieve, you generally feel quite bad about it, because normally we have a conscience. We know if something's good or bad. So when you're procrastinating or you're not doing what you really should be, you kind of feel it deep within yourself that I should really be doing my work, or I should be really focusing or talking to this person, or doing what you should be. And you can feel it deep within yourself. It's similar with athletes as well. If you don't have the correct kind of mind and body reciprocal relationship, then oftentimes you can actually push yourself too far. So I had this experience last year. I was doing karate. I really like doing karate. But actually, I pushed myself too far. I actually didn't listen to what my body was telling me, which is kind of the opposite way around. So I actually pushed myself too far. And actually, I ended up spraining my ankle really badly. I couldn't walk, and it was the most painful experience I'd actually ever experienced. Not because of the pain of my ankle, it was the ability that, I didn't have the ability to walk around basically and do the things that you normally do. And you don't really appreciate that at the time. When you're just walking around, you're going doing things day to day, you take it for granted. You think, yeah, I can do all these things. I can do them whenever I want to. But actually, when you lose that ability, even for a short time, you actually realize actually how grateful you are to actually have that. So, it's quite important to actually realize that actually your mind and your body are actually equally important, and actually you should take care of both. So, the old expression is that, a healthy mind, a healthy body. So, it kind of reciprocates. So if you have a healthy mind, then you generally show a healthy body. So, that was my experience in terms of having a break in that mind and body kind of relationship, which was quite painful. I'm sure if anyone else had any injuries in your life, then you also know that it can be quite a painful experience. So it's important to have this mind and body relationship. And also you were saying that, Michael, that in order to kind of foster this kind of more mind-centric notion, or focus on your responsibilities and so on and so forth, you're right. Taking small steps can be a really good aspect in going about to do that, because oftentimes the hardest thing is actually starting something. So actually, if you think, oh, I have this goal in sight, and you think you're going to make that step right away, it can often be really difficult, because actually you haven't made that foundation, or you haven't actually, maybe you have a bad habit that actually gets in the way of that. So every time you're about to start doing something that you should be doing, you naturally default back to that bad habit. So maybe you're thinking about doing your work, and then you go on Facebook, and then you spend about 10 minutes on Facebook, then you go do 5 minutes of work, then you go back to Facebook again. And so naturally you've created this bad habit where you're basically creating an obstacle yourself to what you should be doing. And so a good way to go about it would be to take steps gradually to change that habit, and actually put yourself in a situation where actually you're able to control what you're doing. So in the case of Facebook, maybe every time you think about Facebook, you actually just switch off your phone, and then you don't have that distraction anymore. Or in the case of, in my case, when I was doing karate, I was terrible to begin with. As everyone knows, whether you're starting music or whatever, you learn and you think you're terrible. But actually, the more time you spend investing in small steps, so you learn basic chords and you think, oh, I only know a little bit. But each time you learn something new or you do something different, you nurture that ability and then you change yourself. So in those small little steps, you're able to bring about a big change. So you can change your whole character, you can change your whole aspect, as long as you set your mind to do it, and also you set it in achievable kinds of phases. Because oftentimes people say, you can have the biggest dreams, and it's true, you can have really big dreams, but oftentimes to get there, you have to take all the steps on the way. You can't just necessarily jump leaps and bounds over all the obstacles. Otherwise, somewhere along the way there's no foundation, then you might fall down again. So in that respect, small steps is a really good way to actually foster this mind-body control. And to end, because that relates really well, there's this poem that I'd like to say. And it's you sow a thought and you reap an act. You sow an act and you reap a habit. You sow a habit and you reap a character. And you sow a character and you reap a destiny. So it's kind of a metaphor for this notion that actually, if we spend the time to invest just a little bit at the beginning, and then you cultivate that, just like a plant, if you keep watering it, eventually it will manifest itself into something more. So as they say, what's the difference between somebody who starts something and somebody who's mastered something? The person who's mastered it has failed far more times, so they've had to climb all the way up to that stage. So, I hope that's something to think about.